Well everyone, WWDC 26, the keynote is officially in the books, and I won't lie to you, this is one of the more unique presentations that we've gotten from Apple at a WWDC. There's a lot to talk about and a lot to break down, but before we do, comment down below. Was the new revamp to Siri, the new revamp to Apple Intelligence, and all the new features they showcased, was that a success overall in your mind? Really curious to know your thoughts, but let's break down the entire presentation right now. So this is going to be all about highlighting the main points of each section. I will have follow-up videos breaking down each category and each feature in depth, so definitely get subscribed and help us get to 1 million subscribers. But Apple started off the presentation, of course, with Tim Cook saying his famous good morning, which it might be his last one, because September 1st is going to be his last day as CEO. But they started off talking about liquid glass and doubling down on that by adding a couple extra features here. Now, the presentation was unique because normally Apple gives us some statistics, some advice, some things that kind of happened over the last year, and then breaks it down on a per operating system basis, so iOS, iPadOS, so on and so forth. Whereas this time, they kind of talked about everything together in totality, still from a feature standpoint. So again, they started off with Liquid Glass 2.0. So overall, they've iterated a lot on this since iOS 26 in that announcement, but basically they're adding a little bit more of customization, and they're realizing that different people have different tastes in terms of how they want their Liquid Glass to be. So they're adding a little slider in there to adjust the readability, to adjust the opacity to get it as clear as possible, all the way to just a little bit more tinted so it's easier to read for some people. They then went on to talk about macOS a little bit in terms of some of the UI refinement, and again, I'm talking about refinements. These are small little design tweaks that doesn't really change the function at all, just kind of the visual appeal of what the operating system is going to look like. So a new unified toolbar, expanded sidebars, colored sidebars for icon is making a return, as well as consistent window corner radii. So again, it makes it just a little bit more fluid and easier to see, I guess, at the end of the day. But again, it's just UI, it's not really a functional difference. And then they went on to talk about performance and snappiness overall when it comes to refining the UI and the operating system experience. So they went on to mention that apps are launching 30 times faster than before, which I didn't know there was like enough time of improvement to increase it 30%, but they also say that photos are going to load up to 70% faster, which I do see happening from time to time. Like you take a picture, it takes a second or two, especially in a low light situation photo, so that's a nice little add-on. AirDrop is up to 80% faster, again, up to. And then external drive transfers on iPad specifically is 5 times faster, getting closer to what it is to kind of use file transfers with the Finder application in macOS. And then one of the biggest things here is that iOS 27 will be compatible to up to the iPhone 11. So that's a 7-year-old iPhone. Now that could be a little bit misleading because, again, while we'll get iOS 27, a version of it on the iPhone 11, it's definitely not getting all these Apple Intelligence and Siri features that's being promised because that's only reserved for the much newer iPhone. So it remains yet to be seen what kind of compromises are made between, let's say, an iPhone 11 and something like an iPhone 17 Pro. But stay tuned and get subscribed, like I said, and we'll kind of test those out as the days go by. And then they went on to talk about better search overall. Now, if this does translate to real world usage in the way that they spoke about, search has been kind of horrendous lately with iOS 26 in terms of just opening up Spotlight and searching things that has a little bit more in depth as opposed to just searching an application. Maybe I want to find a specific photo or time period. That supposedly is going to be a lot better with this new version of iOS. And then we get new features across a lot of Apple applications that they started talking about. So the Photos app gets a nice little revamp in terms of compatibility across different devices. So Photos now give you full resolution with shared albums, and then in that same light in shared albums, you can now have Android users and Windows users on a shared album on iOS, which is something that hasn't been done before. Health got some additional features in terms of perimenopause support, menopause tracking, and educational insights. AirPods now finally, and rejoice, give me a comment down below if you're happy about this. Custom EQs finally coming to AirPods. Now, I don't know if it's just the AirPods Pro or which AirPods it is, but we'll test that as we see fit. And then Apple went on to then spend about 15 minutes of the presentation talking about child safety, trust and safety, parental controls, everything that encompasses that. And again, I for one am all for that because again, I have a 4-year-old, and then if she gets her hands on grandma's iPhone and she goes on YouTube Shorts, then yeah, she can go down a random rabbit hole even at 4 years old. So having all these things put in place is fantastic. I'm going to have a whole separate video on this because there's a lot of information for this one. So comment down below what you want to see out of that, because I do think it is a little bit more niche because of course it's only really for parents. And now let's get into this Siri AI of it all, because that is what it's now being called. It's Siri plus Apple Intelligence, and they're calling it Siri AI moving forward. And actually, from the looks of it, just again, from seeing the keynote, I haven't played with it yet, it looks great. It looks like the massive update that we've been learning for or yearning for, and the massive update that we've all wanted out of Siri. And if this does translate into real world use in the way that it was shown to be used, then yes, I would consider this a success to the first real version of Siri. Again, 2 years late and a lawsuit later, but we're finally getting Siri 2.0. So it's going to be taking in a lot of personal context in order to make a lot of this stuff relevant. So it's going to find information from your Messages app, photos, notes, from your files, from your emails, just by asking it, whether you're asking it orally or you're asking it by typing to Siri. It's also going to pull in a lot more broad world knowledge especially, so Siri can search the web, get current information, generate some answers. And then it has app actions built into that as well, so it can actually complete tasks for you, so draft emails, edit photos, create reminders, and send messages almost on your behalf. You do have to send the last okay. And then, of course, you get some on-screen awareness. Some of the cool demos they showed off here were, again, the World Cup is coming around, so somebody asked it, when the next World Cup game was, and then it said who it was with, and then it kind of asked a follow-up question talking about, all right, let me make a recipe, or let me make a spread of food from both different nationalities, and it gave you recipes, and then it put that into an invite to share with your friends via iMessage. So again, all in one conversation, in a naturally flowing conversation, which is what we wanted Siri to be. And that's what the idea is with Siri, to make it a lot more conversational, make it a lot more, again, for lack of a better term, lifelike. I hate to use that word in this scenario, but you want it to be as human-like as possible when conversing with you, especially if you compare it to the competition of the ChatGPTs and the Perplexities and the Geminis of the world. It does sound relatively natural. Like, you can understand that it is a robot back there and it's not full human, but it's much more conversational than Siri was up until this point, hopefully. But again, you can have follow-up questions, you can brainstorm with Siri, which is something that I do with ChatGPT on the personal finance side a lot of the time, and it'll just help you overall when it comes to that standpoint. And then we will have a dedicated Siri application, which I think is going to be great, especially when syncing across devices. One of the best things about ChatGPT or any of these competitors is that you can open up the ChatGPT application on your iPhone, start a conversation, then open it up on your iPad or Mac. The same thing will be happening with this new version of Siri AI. And then Apple briefly went over the camera and visual intelligence. So visual intelligence is going to live inside of the camera application moving forward. So the new Siri camera mode, you can point your camera at food, objects, locations, bills, and then depending on what you want, it'll do something for you on that behalf. So you could take a picture of some food and it'll give you the nutritional information that it's guesstimating in terms of caloric intake, if it's healthy for you. They showed like a little kind of gradient in terms of that's a healthy food or not. You can also take pictures of objects or locations, get some information on that. Take a picture of a restaurant bill and then split it right inside of that same UI, and then probably Apple Cash request the people if you're just putting it on one person's credit card. So all very useful things that, again, things that just are very easy to understand that should have been around since the beginning. And then the reason Apple didn't break this down by an operating system standpoint like they usually do is because Siri is going to be going over all the different OSs, right? Of course, they showed off some Mac use cases with visual intelligence where you can literally just use visual intelligence on a screenshot and for screen content to ask it questions. And the coolest one, from my opinion, was with Vision OS and the Vision Pro. You basically have this floating blue orb inside of your Vision Pro UI. You literally look at it and then ask a question on what it's seeing. So it's kind of like circle to search for your eyeballs, because that's what you're seeing. You're seeing the world in front of you with floating windows, and being able to ask Siri questions on that is going to be an amazing thing to see. Comment down below if you guys want to see me use that in different use cases with my Vision Pro. And then Apple went on to showcase a few other things from the Apple Intelligence and Siri standpoint on a per app situation. So Safari, they talked about AI tab organizations, and then also the Notify Me. For people that are maybe waiting for concert tickets or waiting for somebody to come back in stock or something for a website to change, you can have a Notify Me situation where it'll notify you when that thing happens on a certain website, so then you can go in and take whatever action you need. So I can see this being big for restocking things in terms of online shopping. There was also, I think it was called create an extension. So being able to create an extension just based on natural language for specific use cases. Very, very cool in my opinion. So then the Messages app gets updated as well and understands conversations and context. It can create reminders, find photos directly in the keyboard, suggest actions as well. So everything is kind of just getting smarter, and it's reducing the friction between what you need to do in those applications. And that is what Siri AI is going to be. It's supposed to make your life a little bit easier. So instead of going to your Photos application, looking for the photo that they need, it'll take whatever personal context is around you in that conversation and just pull up those photos right in front of you, and then you can select which ones you want, which does reduce the friction and time used when finding those photos. Same thing goes with the Calendar application and the Phone app, just things that are just much easier to go from point A to point B. Siri AI will handle it. They then had a small section about the Home application, talking about how the Home application is getting smarter, especially with 4K cameras and cameras in general, being able to use Apple Intelligence and Siri AI to pinpoint who people are, look at contextual awareness of if they've seen them before, maybe categorize who those people are. So that's always great when it comes to show me package deliveries and then being able to find that really quickly inside of the HomeKit application. And then two more things that Apple talked about here. One of them is going to be the Shortcuts app. Shortcuts is supposed to get much easier moving forward. I don't really play too much with shortcuts. I have a couple here and there, but I don't use them too much. But I know that there's a huge ecosystem and community of shortcuts users and creators. And you can get very, very technical in these shortcuts that you create over time. So now instead of going into the complicated route, which is basically like coding on the shortcuts application, you can now use natural language to describe a shortcut to happen, and then it'll create it on your behalf. So let's see how that ends up working out. Shout out Steven Robles. Love that guy. He makes shortcuts and he makes custom ones. So I'm curious to see how he handles this moving forward. I'm going to be watching his videos for sure. And then last but not least, the Photos application. They showed some great use cases here in terms of how they're utilizing Siri AI and Apple Intelligence in the Photos app without removing the essence of the actual image. And they harped on that issue a lot. They don't want to change what the image is. They just want to enhance it and make it a little bit better and give you more options. With the first one being the new Cleanup 2.0. Basically, it's going to get much better object removal. Right now, with the first version of it, it is pretty terrible. It's good at removing things that are obviously there that can be easily removed, but if the moment there's a little bit of complication, it gets annoying to deal with, so that's going to be a good one to test. You have the Extend tool, which is going to expand images beyond the original frame. And then lastly, the spatial reframing tool. It's called Reframe. This one's very cool. It's like bringing the magic of the spatial photos from Vision Pro on a 2D plane on your iPhone to then be able to move and reframe yourself to a different angle of what your subject is. So that is going to be a really fun one to play with. Let's see how it kind of pans out over time and if it works as well as advertised. So that's everything that Apple talked about. Tim Cook then came out and kind of said a big thank you because this could be his last keynote that we see him in the CEO moniker and the CEO kind of title, but let's see how that pans out over the next few weeks and months. I think it was an overall success with Siri. There's a lot of different use cases. There's going to be a lot of different nuances as well. Like I said, the iPhone 11 is supported by iOS 27, but I doubt that it's going to get any of these Apple Intelligence supported things. They also mentioned that to get the most powerful on-device kind of Siri AI, you need to have an iPhone 17 Pro or newer, you need to have an M4 iPad Pro or newer, you need to have an M3 chip laptop or newer. So again, this is going to be reserved for more of the high-powered and newer pieces of tech. So I don't know what that means for the people that have an iPhone 15 Pro or a 16 Pro or anything before or after that. So definitely stay tuned, get subscribed. We got a lot more content coming down the pipeline to kind of understand who's going to get what, when they're going to get it, and how much of it they're going to get as well. But let me know in the comment down below. Successful keynote or still a wash until you actually get your hands on it. We're installing the betas as we speak, which I'm excited to get into. And I'm installing it on my main device, so wish me luck. But that'll do it for this video. If you made it to the end, leave a little dolphin. AFC Richmond for the win. Here are a couple other videos that YouTube thinks that you should watch. Get subscribed.